So here we are back with our working research topic, consumer, society, Pope's Raven the Lock, and the image of coffee that he uses in the poem. This, if you remember, is one of the articles that we found during our previous research experience with the Modern Language Association Bibliography. It's a piece called Women, China, and Consumer Culture in 18th Century England by Beth Kowalewski-Wallace, and it was published in 18th Century Studies, the premier scholarly journal in 18th Century Studies in America. So we know it's going to be reputable. It's recent, so it's fairly recent, so we know that the research should be up to date. So let's take a look at it. This looks like a critical essay. Okay? We have a lot of footnotes. We have references to other texts, okay, and other scholars. Okay? And that, of course, is what researchers do. We do our homework, we find out what other people have written on the subject, and we evaluate it. We fold that into what we've learned, other primary sources that people may not have looked at, and so on. Okay? So it stands to reason that another thing that we can do to further our own research is to look at the materials that other scholars in similar areas have found interesting, useful, and helpful. Okay? So one way to do that is to look at the footnotes. Another way to do that is to look at what's called survey of literature. That usually occupies the first, several paragraphs, several pages of a scholarly essay. It's where the author goes over the material that's already out there. Okay? So let's take a look at some of the footnotes. Okay? Those are usually going to be found at the very end of the page, or at the very end of the article, or at the bottom of the page. And I just want to draw your attention to these things. Okay? These are the notes. Okay? This is where the author, Kowalewski-Wallace, is setting out, where she's getting which version of Pope she's using. But you'll also notice a variety of other sources. Okay? Laura Brown's Reading Race and Gender, Jonathan Swift. Okay? Cleanth Brooks, an essay from The Well-Wrought Urn. Here's an essay on tea, gender, and domesticity in 18th century England. Now, we're interested in coffee, and coffee is related to tea, so I would probably check that out. Okay? Laura Brown, The Ends of Empire, Women and Ideology in Early 18th Century English Literature. This is a book, and this might also be useful. Remember when we were looking at the MLA bibliography sources that we found? And a lot of them referenced imperialism, empire, colonialism. Okay. This might be useful. When we looked at Aladdin and we found that in the history of coffee, the idea of slavery, the slave trade, imperialism, colonialism, those were all of crucial importance in the history of coffee. That might also lead us to this book. She also gives us several references to primary sources: Samuel Johnson, The Rambler. Okay? Charles Lamb, who is a later author who describes the feminine partiality for old China. Consumer Behavior, this is another text. And Material Culture in Britain, this is going to be one of those background sources that we talked about earlier. And so on. Okay, so this is clearly a place that you can go to find more information that you might not come across in your own research on the MLA bibliography, because, try as we might, we're not going to find all of the right words to use in our searches. So you use what other people have done. You use the language that other people have done to help you narrow your own research. All right? And it also, it leads you to these wonderful places. So it's always enjoyable, and you learn so many new and interesting things. And I wish you all the best in your research.